Ms. Usha Chandradas.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise in support of this bill, but I would like to seek some clarifications from SMSG on two particular provisions. The present amendments introduce the new Section 10L of the Income Tax Act, which brings to tax gains from the sale of foreign assets by entities that are a part of a multinational group. These changes seek to align our tax rules with that set out in the European Union Code of Conduct Group guidance. While there are exceptions carved out in the new Section 10L, the amendment has the broad effect of deeming as income in nature gains which prior to this amendment may have been characterized as capital gains. It is quite a dramatic change in Singapore's income tax landscape, and I would like to seek the following clarifications from the SMS. First, what are the reasons for enacting Section 10L at this time? It has been announced that more comprehensive international tax-related amendments concerning Pillar 2 of the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Initiative will only be implemented from 2025. Would the SMS be able to contextualize Singapore's wider roadmap towards compliance with these new international tax norms? My second clarification has to do with the interpretation of the new Section 10L. I note that in the response to the public consultation on the bill, the Ministry of Finance has indicated that IRAS will provide further guidance on the concept of economic substance through an e-tax guide to be issued. This is expected to provide more detailed examples for certain specific sectors. However, there are some aspects of Section 10L which can be clarified further, and in particular, those relating to the definition of an excluded entity at Section 10L, subsection 16. Reference is made here to a pure equity holding entity having adequate human resources and premises in Singapore. However, it is not clear whether this assessment will be an objective test adopted by the authorities or a subjective one which will be based on what the taxpayer fairly represents in the context of its operations. There are also doubts as to how the term direct and effective control will be interpreted. Now, this was a requirement added only after the public consultation process, and some aspects of it can be explained further. For example, it is not clear how it will be applied in the context of a fund entity which has outsourced discretionary management to a fund manager in Singapore. Professional commentators have further noted that it would be useful to set up a system of expedited advance rulings on the determination of economic substance in order to assist taxpayers. And it is not immediately apparent from the legislation if such a system will be made available. Additionally, it is also unclear as to how Section 10L will interact with present administrative concessions on the operation of Section 1025 and the deemed remittance of foreign source income. One particular example is the present concessionary treatment for foreign businesses which are not operating in or from Singapore. They're actually able to remit their foreign income to Singapore without being taxed on such income. I'm given to understand that this concession is in place to begin with to encourage the use of Singapore's banking systems and facilities. To summarize, there are aspects of Section 10L which remain unclear. I would therefore like to ask if the SMS can clarify the extent to which more detailed guidance and examples will be provided in order to assist taxpayers in their interpretation of this new law. I understand that tax practitioners have written to the authorities to seek clarifications on these technical points and more, and I hope that more detailed guidance will follow. While I fully agree that we should indicate our strong commitment to evolving international tax norms, we should balance this commitment with the need to provide clarity to businesses that wish to engage in or with Singapore. Now, the next provision that I would like to address in the Income Tax Amendment Bill is the new Section 37AA, which introduces the Philanthropy Tax Incentive Scheme for Family Offices, or the PTIS for short. The PTIS is being introduced in order to strengthen Singapore's position as a regional philanthropy hub. It's also put in place to encourage family offices to anchor their giving operations in Singapore. On this provision, I have two clarifications for the SMS. First, the enhanced deduction under the new Section 37AA is subject, at subsection 9, to any condition precedent or condition subsequent that the minister or an authorized body may impose on the fund manager managing the funds of the incentivized vehicles concerned. Would the SMS be able to clarify what is intended by this provision and what kinds of conditions are envisioned? Subsection 10 provides for a clawback of the tax deduction granted if fund managers of incentivized funds fail to adhere to conditions which are imposed later in time. Now, these fund managers may not be entities that the approved donors actually have any control over, and so I would like to clarify if any steps are being taken to ensure that such donors are not unfairly prejudiced in the event that the authorities decide to unilaterally impose conditions subsequent on their fund managers. Secondly, I would like to ask the SMS if steps are being taken to ensure that local charities and institutions of public character, or IPCs, are not excluded from the benefits of the PTIS. I acknowledge that the proposed amendments today extend the application of the 250% tax deduction on donations to local IPCs all the way to 2026, which is a very welcome move. According to the Monetary Authority of Singapore website, the PTIS will also require that qualifying single-family officers should increase their headcounts, and this includes the hiring of philanthropy professionals. It has also been announced that donations should be made through certain local qualifying intermediaries. Looking at these measures in totality, it appears that there is a push towards helping local charities to develop their expertise in supporting overseas charitable giving and towards growing philanthropic capabilities in Singapore. That being said, it is also clear that the PTIS is primarily intended to allow family officers to obtain tax advantages in respect of their overseas giving. What then could result is a race for donations, whether perceived or real, with local charities feeling as though they have a new source of competition for funding. Now, charities in Singapore don't always have an easy time with fundraising, and I'd like to highlight the specific example of arts-based charities. From the National Arts Council's Arts Philanthropy Corporate Giving Research findings, which surveyed 470 respondents last year, companies agreed that corporate giving to the arts is important to build a vibrant community and a connected society. Now, regardless of this awareness, businesses were still not motivated to give to the arts sector, possibly because such benefits were not deemed to be as direct from a business perspective. The research report concludes that more can be done to better articulate how a vibrant community underpinned by the arts can be good for businesses. The statistics in Singapore seem to bear this out. In a 2021 report by the Commissioner of Charities, arts and heritage charities received only 5.8% of all annual receipts in the charities sector. In contrast, charities in the education and social welfare sector accounted for almost 2/3 of the total receipts obtained in financial year 2020. DEC is an art centre for photography and registered IPC in Singapore. It's presently fundraising to build a permanent art centre for photography, and amongst the visual art community is well known as being a big supporter of both emerging and established artistic talent. Gwen Lee, who is the co-founder and director of DEC, once told me that fundraising for her charity is like carrying the weight of the Himalayas on her shoulders all the time. There is little respite, and there is constant worry about how staff will be paid and how they will meet their compliance obligations. DEC is just one example, of course, from the arts. This is a similar concern faced by many local charities, which often operate with lean teams and on stretched budgets. Particularly in the arts, the PTIS can potentially provide a new source of funding for local charities, and in my view, this can create some much-needed diversity in terms of funding sources. This diversity is important because an over-reliance on government funding and subsidies in the arts is neither sustainable in the long term, nor is it desirable in terms of the substance and quality of artistic production. Secondly, foreign family offices setting up shop in Singapore bring with them not only sources of funding, but also different ways of looking at the world. Particularly in the context of arts charities, this could be useful in providing new perspectives on art making within our local creative community. While we certainly cannot force philanthropic organizations to donate their money locally if they do not wish to do so, it is my hope that the government will help to ensure that local charities and IPCs are well poised to avail themselves of the new sources of philanthropic funding in Singapore, which will benefit from this new scheme. I hope that when administering the PTIS, local charitable entities are brought to the attention of approved donors as well. The rising tide of foreign philanthropy in Singapore should result in all charitable boats being lifted to greater heights. Notwithstanding these clarifications, I stand in support of the bill. Thank you.